Hey now, we are live. The three of us are live, not just me for today. And let me just take the emote only off. And I'm also going to put out the usual "this stream is rated PG" message. Normally I let people say pretty much whatever the heck they want, within reason. But when we do the Tolkien stream, since it's going to go on the YouTube channel, we have to keep things pretty PG, which is good because Tolkien rarely goes above PG. Sometimes PG-13. The Children of Húrin is probably his rated R story, but for various reasons, I think.
Did you guys see the article I posted on the meaning of Korra?
No, I did not see that one, actually.
Someone posted a question that's saying, "What's the full meaning of Korra?" And I answered this. It's pretty short, but it's kind of funny. It stands for questions and observations regarding Arda.
Okay, I gotcha. All right, we're not gonna be able to do it that way.
I don't know why I
do this with my phone.
I don't know why anybody thinks it means anything else, but okay.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Let's see if I can just use my phone to do this.
People keep posting all kinds of things about other things not related to Arda, and I could never understand how Korra got taken over by all these other people and issues.
Well, you know what it is that we are living in the world of Arda in the Seventh Age, so
Well, that's what I wrote in my article. I said, well, isn't Korra about the life and the world of where we are, and that's what Arda. And it's not. It's only one paragraph, but it actually says all that. So it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing, I guess.
Did you just see that opportunity, and you were like, I have to do this?
I was like, you know what? I knew what it meant, but I was like, how can I make this into something?
No, I mean, you just saw the question, and you're like, here's my time to shine, right?
No, I knew the answer, and I was like, instead going, well, I wonder if I can make this into something related to Arda.
You're not understanding my question.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah, at the very end of his life, Tolkien equated Arda to what we call the solar system. And I don't know if he was influenced by C.S. Lewis or not in this, but that fits very well with C.S. Lewis's depiction of our world in the space series ending with That Hideous Strength.
That's ever so slightly off. Arda is the planet and the immediate area surrounding it, which would include the Undying Lands and the sun and the moon, which, they're different, and Ambar being the planet itself. The solar system, he did have a word for it. It was Ilium.
And I'm saying at the very end of his life, he changed that. He said, if we just see Arda as what came into being that was under the creation powers of the Valar, he at that point brought it up to be the entire solar system.
Oh, you're talking
the thing that's in the Silmarillion. In the Silmarillion, it says that that Ea was set into the void.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Ea.
Be everything?
No, Ea is the universe, the created world. Arda.
That's what I mean.
Well, let me finish. Arda was the planet and the surrounding area, is what I said. But what Sid is saying is a little bit of myths transformed, that because the literal meaning of the word Arda is the world, it could be seen as meaning everything. So I think like what Sid is saying, and he didn't really fully implement this because it gets pretty wild. It gets into like Angband actually being on the moon, and all sorts of wild ideas that he had, and that we talked about this on the phone a little bit earlier, Matt, is that the idea that he had was that the Silmarillion was elvish myth, and that the reality of the history of the cosmos was more in line with the scientific notions that we have today.
You might be missing, John, that I'm agreeing with you totally. I'm saying that Arda is definitely that. I'm just saying that Ea, in its total creation, is set into the void, would thereby be everything created into the void at the first moment of creation. That's basically the whole universe. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I was saying we're not talking about Ea.
Yeah, I read a quote from Tolkien about that as well, and basically, he had a marvelous image of, Ea beyond Arda, and he spoke of spirals and endless varying creation. It's almost as if he foresaw the discovery of galaxies of all sorts and things we've only seen since we sent up the Hubble and JWST, as if his inner imagination could envision the universe we know now.
Yeah.
Well, when he was writing this in the 40s and 50s, there would have been enough evidence that there were things that were out there, so he was on some decent ground at that point.
Yeah, I mean, but I think what Sid is saying is correct, is that his imagination was, like, he was imagining things that they didn't know, and it turned out to be pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close to our understanding. I mean, like I said, we talked about this a little bit on the phone, and I know we have like a slightly different opinion on the Silmarillion and whether or not we would consider it as being completely factual. And I think it's obviously very simple to say, yes, of course everything is in it is true, because we don't really have conflicting accounts other than like the Book of Lost Tales, which we can easily say aren't true because they're Sid, could it just I'm just, with the way everything's cropped, it looks kind of obscene. I know you're nursing your leg. It just
I'll really work to it. It's very hard.
Right. Actually, you know what? Since we shouldn't get too deep into the lore stuff, since we are just starting here. Sid, you wanted a few minutes to talk at the beginning of the stream about why we're doing the episode on the 19th rather than on the 5th, and it was delayed twice, and so you can go ahead and do that now, and it'll explain why Sid is touching his legs so much.
Hi everybody. I want to apologize. The fact that this is running 2 weeks later than usual and that came up last minute are both due to conditions in my life. I am unfortunately facing a serious chronic illness, and the last couple of weeks of my life have been rather similar to Frodo's journey from Weathertop to Rivendell. I haven't been all here. I'm back. I'm doing better. I hope to wake up and say hello to Gandalf soon, and I think I'll be in much better shape the first Thursday of each month going forward. And I want to thank you all for your patience, and thank John for his skillful management of the team. And I really hope that today will be a discussion, not just from the three of us to you, but I hope the topics we're going to bring up will engage you guys, and that John can read off the live stream questions and thoughts that we chip in. So be prepared for that, please.
And what was missing there is that the condition is mostly located in his leg, and that's why he's sort of babying it right now. He's not doing anything that is against Twitch terms of service. It just kind of looked like that for a moment. That's why I had to say, whoa, wait a minute. I'll tell you, I don't want to get too much into this because it's weird, but there was a person, I'm not going to name names here, but there was a person who did something very wrong on Twitch by himself. We'll just put it to you that way. And then was like, oh, the camera was on? Oh, I didn't know, and apparently, he was unaware that he was broadcasting himself, enjoying his own company. And the excuse that he made, because of course he got temporarily banned for that. They'll kick you off for a few weeks for doing that kind of thing, which honestly they should have kicked him off permanently. But he said he was scratching his leg. Because it was only from the waist up. You could tell what he was doing, but you didn't see the gory details, thankfully. And he was like, "Oh, I was just scratching my leg." And I'm thinking, for 20 minutes? Like, that's... You are not scratching your leg, sir.
I just want to reassure everyone, you do not need to worry about us. When we enjoy our time alone, our nose is buried in a book.
Yeah, the children of Húrin, right?
Exactly.
Beren and Luthien.
That's about as deep and dark as we can get.
Oh man. But yeah, we're gone live a little early here, so we have some time to sort of like talk and whatnot at the beginning.
Well,
here.
Actually, the worst thing I've ever done with a book that was you might call foul is try to read the Silmarillion in Russian.
Okay. Can you read Russian? Is that like a skill that you have?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
No, I speak Russian.
I did not know that. Can you give us like the one ring to rule them all, but in Russian?
Not in this episode, but I'd have to think about how to translate. Yeah,
that would be an interesting little thing.
Yeah, говорю русский язык.
You know what's funny is that I had read out the that inscription on one of my YouTube videos in the Black Speech. And I got a comment that was like, it's suspicious that you speak the Black Speech a little too well.
Yeah, I try to keep that, secret.
Snaz Barzun. I don't have to.
You just brought up translating the words, for the ring into Russian. I'll have that for you.
Okay, next time we can do that then. Here, I have it.
I'll have it for you next time.
I'll give.
I don't want to accidentally do it wrong on the live broadcast.
No, of course not.
The words are a little bit different, so I gotta think about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, translations are always like that. Translations. Here, I'll give you a little of the Black Speech here. Asnaz durbatuluk asnaz grimbatul asnaz trakatuluk akbarzum yishi grimpatul.
My friends, beware. It is dangerous to study too deeply the arts of the enemy, even with good intent.
Sid, it's funny. There is a meme that was posted. There is a shocking amount of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings related memes out there, and one of them showed that scene with Gandalf and Frodo and throwing the ring into the fire, and Frodo saying, "I can't read it. It's Elvish, but I can't read it." He says, "It's the Black Speech of Mordor, which I will not utter here." And then Frodo says, "Why not?" And Gandalf says, "Because the look on Elrond's face when I do it in Rivendell is going to be priceless."
You guys have probably heard the saying that anything you say in French sounds good.
It's true. It's true.
And anything in Black Speech you could say possibly sounds bad.
It sounds evil, yeah. There's certain languages that have certain feels to them, and yeah. It's like that scene from, I forget which one, but there was one of those, the Matrix films, where there was a guy that said, I love cursing in French, and then he lets out this very long string of horrible obscenities in French, and it just sounds so beautiful.
That was the Merovingian.
I have a suggestion for next month.
Okay,
Matt, if you deliver the full poem of the rings in Russian, I will deliver it in French.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you got it.
Should I do it in Spanish then? Should we make it a trifecta?
Yes.
Or quap.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do it in Quenya.
Oh my God, you might have a million hits by. You might have a million hits by midnight on that one.
The hour has struck, my friends. It is time to inaugurate the council.
Yes, we're going to do that. We're going to switch to over here, guys. Welcome to the stream. This is the Council of Tolkien. I have with me. Let's just all introduce ourselves. I'll go last. Starting over here with Mr. Sid Campbellson as Alcar Arato. Say hi and introduce yourself, Sid.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Welcome. And thank you all for your graciousness in allowing us to run a couple weeks late. I'm really glad to be back and in one piece.
And over here, I have Matt Richardson, also known as Anavatar Haranian. That was your cue to say something.
Yeah, I am. I am. Yeah, I'm Matt, and I go on Quora as Lore Master. And welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
One word, Lore Master. Right?
One word.
Yes, there is this other Lore Master that pretends to be you. That's why we have to make sure we get it right. Hi, Moogle. And of course, there is myself. You guys know me. This is my channel after all. But my name is John Sierra, Eruluse Oronti. And we figured it out. We figured out that between the three of us, we have over 100 years of experience talking about Tolkien and studying Tolkien. And there was a comment. I'm actually going to bring up the comments from last time, if I could find where that is, that mentioned that. Let's see. Oh dear, where's last? Okay, here we are, because we were in. Oh, that's July. I need August. There it is. Moria is where we were. I don't need the views. I just need the... Oh, it must have been on one of... It must have been one of the older ones then. But I will tell you what the comment was. It must have been on one of the older episodes. They said that between the three, they could really feel that century of experience when we speak, which is a great compliment.
As you said just now, I realized this year is the 50th anniversary of me reading Lord of the Rings for the first time.
Wow.
I'm at 47.
Yeah, I guess it was about 1990, so next year will be, there you go, like 25 years, well, 35 years really, of having read it. So there was a comment here that I wanted to read specifically to you, Matt, because we were talking about when the world was flat and everything, and the tallest peak in Middle-earth. Well, not in Middle-earth, but in Arda. And this is interesting because Zephyr is pointing out that the mountain of Taniquetil and the island of Toleraceia and in the entirety, indeed, of the Undying Lands would be removed physically from the earth after the fall of Numenor. So he's sort of suggesting here that could we consider Taniquetil to be the tallest peak in Arda if it was sundered from the earth? But then again, we were just saying just a little while ago how Arda is not merely the earth. So it's kind of amazing that we were just talking about that.
Well, I take the passage to mean more that it's talking about Middle Earth in the latter ages. That's the exact way it's said. And we know that the two peaks are Caradhras and
Caradhras.
They're 35,000. Sorry?
Caradhras.
Caradhras and
wow, you said it amazingly well there, I gotta say.
Yeah, I'm just talking in plain speak here.
Yeah.
So there's two of them. They're both 35,000. Anyway, when you're taller than that, then you're talking about a lamp that's more than 7 miles high.
Yeah. Well, or at least the structure that holds the lamp aloft is that tall.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, because I've always imagined
I did a measurement on a normal, on the biggest towers that have ever been constructed for light.
Yeah.
And expanded it on the square cube law, and it came out to actually I did a 9-mile one because just to get it just really to be above 7 miles, as Tolkien said. And it came out to 9 miles high and like 4,200 feet wide at its base.
Well, I'm not trying to get too deeply into this. I was just bringing up the comment because
saying to hold it up. Yeah. Because it was made by Aule. So it's a physical structure. It's not imaginary. And so because it was made by him, like when he makes stuff, then it's a physical thing. So how big is something like that in a normal in a normal lamp type shape, and so that's why I did it, because that gives people a
Okay.
good idea what Tolkien's talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Mogul. It was a while because Sid was ill. But he missed the thing. He was just saying it's been a while since the last podcast. Yeah. Sid was not doing well. He did have surgery. He is. You know, it's interesting, Sid. You said something via email that you were going through the dead marshes. Do you remember saying that? And
Yeah, and that's related to what I'll be talking to everybody about tonight.
yes. Oh, and you're going to go first in just a little bit. But the reason I bring it up is you said that you were going through the dead marshes and that you hope that when you come out, we'll meet at the Black Gate, which I thought was rather suspicious. I didn't think of, I didn't hit the reply button at that point, but I wanted to say no. We'll meet in Rohan. You would be coming back from Mordor, not towards it, right?
I was feeling very grim.
I guess so. Like, well, wait a minute. Why am I going to the Black Gate? I don't feel like going there.
You wouldn't want to be one of Faramir's men? You would fit there very well.
Well, that's quite a bit to the south there. That's Ithilien. And actually, what's interesting, Ithilien being the part of Gondor that is the closest to Mordor, but also the most beautiful part of Gondor. Very interesting.
That's a great lead-in for me if you're ready.
I think we are. Let me just get the... Well, first I'm going to get the timer set up to give you 2 minutes to explain it, and then we will start the timer at 30 minutes so that we can all discuss it. So I'm starting at 2 minutes here, and go ahead and explain, Sid.
Tolkien said very clearly in the letters that Lord of the Rings is not about war, it's just the setting. And he also spoke of the war in capital letters as an ongoing, ever-existing thing, unlike wars. And what he said about wars is everybody loses. What is Tolkien talking about there? And what is the theme of that Tolkien is interested in? He once called it right worship. If you don't know Catholic theology, it doesn't go. He means right living. He means living as a righteous person, whether it's a righteous wizard like Gandalf, or a righteous hobbit like Sam, or a righteous ex-warrior like Eowyn. What is righteous living, no matter what circumstances? And tonight's first question is, what prevents all of us from living in and creating a much better world? And war is certainly one of three things that Tolkien presents as that which brings us down into lives that are very dark. Another is interpsychic. Morgoth poisoned the minds of every human being so that our lives are too often like Frodo walking through the dead marshes or through the plains of Gorgoroth, or Hurin pinned to a mountain watching the demonic torture of his whole family. But there's a third one, and Tolkien makes it clear it happens for thousands of years. He just doesn't write a novel about it, because who would want a novel about disease? Yet if you look at Arnor, Aragorn says that the council explained to Boromir, many evil things there are that your strong walls and bright swords do not stay. Peace and freedom, do you say? The North would know little of them but for us. Fear would have destroyed them. But when dark things come from the houseless hills or creep from sunless woods, they fly from us. Bree lives within a day of foes that would freeze Barliman Butterbur's heart or lay his little town in ruin.
Okay, and time there.
Let me just make a quick
go ahead. Just letting you know that to wrap it up.
As we talk about this, consider the old forest, which has most beautiful place, Tolkien and Goldberry's home, and also the Withywindle with the tree and the dead marshes. Consider Greenwood the Great, a beautiful forest that twice became Mirkwood. The most beautiful farmed land in all Middle Earth was where the Entwives lived, which by the end of the War in the Second Age became the Brownlands, where plants even 3,000 years later would not grow. So, what is it like to contemplate? And the question I want to ask everybody is, in your own experience, what is the value of looking at diseased and ill lands
Okay, we have to.
as how we grow and learn?
I have to set the timer here. Yeah, you went way over time there. Okay, let me set the timer here for 30 minutes. Yeah. And here we go. Okay. So my first comment, it's not I have to think about this a little bit, but my first comment is when Tolkien says the war like that, with capitals like that. I think that we don't know exactly what he's referring to. He may have been referring to World War One and his own experiences, but I kind of feel that he might be speaking about the ongoing just general struggle of good versus evil.
In this case, he was that particular citation because he says wars end.
Yeah.
Always in loss, but the war goes on forever, and by forever he means since the fall out of the Garden of Eden.
And I mean, I could sit here and talk for 3 hours alone about what stops us from making the world a better place, because there's a lot of things that unfortunately do, and most of them are in our own hearts and have been put there. Whether you want to attribute it to human nature or whether you don't, you want to attribute it to Morgoth. There's something dark there that we have to make an effort to resist. That goodness is a learned behavior. Treating other people well is a learned behavior. We have to try to be good, and I think Tolkien knew that, and that's why we saw, and I've spoken about this in the past. We see it a lot with the leaders. The good leaders are in the front of their armies. The bad leaders are behind their armies. The effort and the willingness to put yourself out there in danger, whether it's a real physical danger or a metaphysical spiritual danger, courage is the virtue there to face the unknown, to face the dangerous, to face evil. Matt?
Yes.
I'm prompting you to say something.
Oh. Well, there's a couple levels of understanding these kind of things. One of the moral lessons that we have is what we all know as the golden rule, which basically goes like this: treat others as you want to be treated. And in ethics and philosophy, that doesn't really cut it, actually, because the next level is actually to treat others as they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to actually get to a different level of understanding and listening to understand how to treat someone. For example, I once offered to send Sid a fifth of scotch, Macallan 18-year scotch, and he declined. And the reason that he declined is because it might be what I want, but it's not what Sid wants to be recognized or to be gifted or to be shown that he's cared for. Of course, that example I've just given you is fictitious. I didn't actually offer him any scotch, but I wanted to give an example of something that really has to, I think, maybe keep in our minds about actually, how to care for other people.
Not to cut in too much, but you do have a real example in the Morgoth coin.
Yeah.
That was a very real example of the same sort of thing. So I was like, dang. As soon as you said that a fifth of Macallan, I wanted to quote Gimli, that was a kingly gift.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate that, John. I had to look at that for about 5 seconds before I sent it to you. And I want to point out that Sid, because of the way he lives his life, he rejected my Morgothic coin because he knew it was going to be a Morgothic coin that came to him in the mail that was sealed
with the Mordor seal too.
Mordor. Yeah. So I don't think that he really wanted to double down of nasty. So
you guys, I hold on, talk for a moment. I got to grab I want to show the seal because I still have it. I'm going to go grab it. So you guys just talk for a moment while I go grab it.
I told Laurel about it, that I was sending it out, and I told her that basically that version of the story, and she said, "Oh my God, how would you like to get a letter that's sealed with the Mordor symbol in runes, and knowing that inside of it is a Morgothic coin. I mean, it's like that's about as bad as it gets for messages as far as the mail is concerned.
This reminds me of something I was going to say right before we said talk. Remember, we were talking about the fact that Gandalf says he will not utter the dark language in Frodo's house. And I think he's honestly scared that it would invoke Sauron's attention. But that means that at the Council of Elrond, I am convinced that Elrond and Gandalf did a lot of background magic in order to hide the council so that it would not be seen by Sauron. And I love these moments of we know more must be going on, but it's left to our own imagination what that is. I'd really like to turn back.
We have some clues, and you're right. And by the way, John's off the thing real quick. I'll just tell you, I added them up. It's not 100 years of experience; it's 133.
Wow.
And on that note,
but let me just show this here.
Oh,
because
okay.
This isn't the first seal. Let me actually, it's because it's not really showing that well. Let me switch to the full screen camera here. This isn't even the Eye of Sauron. This is Angband. So you guys don't know what it's like to get a letter from Angband. And then in there is a currency of the first Dark Lord, you know. But
tell everybody how the envelope looked when I sent it to you in runes.
Well, you could see it right here. Let's see. Yeah.
Can't.
It'll show us backwards because of the way the camera works, but.
Oh yeah.
There it is. I think that this actually goes into Sid's topic, what you were talking about with the black speech and what we were saying earlier. The council, yes, there was a lot of background magic that was well protected. There was 2 of the 3 Elven Rings of Power working at once there, 100%. But also, it goes into that golden rule, and the second part of the golden rule of ethics that you mentioned there, Matt, is not only treat others as you would want to be treated, because some people are isolationists by nature and want to be left alone, and so if you were to treat others as the way you wanted to be treated, you wouldn't ever talk to anybody, and everybody wants to be treated differently. And it becomes not only as do no harm, but also as respect. And I think that Gandalf saying that he would not speak the black speech in Bag End was not a limitation that he put upon himself because he thought that something terrible might happen, but I think it was out of respect for the sanctity of Frodo's house. I think that's part of it.
But I wanted to pick up. I agree with you, but I wanted to pick up what I was saying to Sid for a second before I said the 133 years, because he is absolutely dead center on it. And something we don't talk about ever, actually, and that is that there was a kind of Galadriel's protection over Lorien, a Melian's girdle kind of protection at Imladris. Elrond was powerful enough to actually pull that off. And I think that was the reason for that, obviously, part of the reason for that secret meeting. I think they were able to really speak. Even with a ring right there in front of them, I think that there was an ability to speak plainly, and I think that Gandalf was free to do it in the book, speak it out that way, because he wanted to impress upon everybody there the real risk in the tongue of the black speech, the way that Sauron meant it by writing it in the cursive elven language and have it be black speech at the same time. It's really, really scary, and I think it was really effective.
To circle back to Sid's actual topic about the diseased lands and such, you mentioned something curious there about Greenwood becoming Mirkwood twice over. Could you elaborate on that?
If you read closely, you'll find that the curse on Mirkwood faltered just after the end of The Hobbit, because at the same time the White Council drove Sauron out of Dol Guldur, and there's a brief mention at the beginning of the Fellowship that Mirkwood for some decades was far less dark and full of awful creatures. But then within a decade or two of the beginning of The Lord of the Rings, the year of the war, it got dark again because Sauron had sent his Nazgul back to occupy Dol Guldur.
The Witch King was there. Haldir speaks of that as well. They're right across the river there. And I actually just fielded a question on YouTube about specifically Mirkwood. They asked, does it ever recover? And for anybody out there wondering, yes, it does. It becomes known as the Forest of Green Leaves, which is interesting because if you say that in Green Leaves in Sindarin, you get Legolas. So it becomes the Legolas Forest, and it winds up being split into these three wonderful realms, one of Thranduil, one of Celeborn, and one of Beorn. But then but the Dead Marshes, let's talk about that, because I think you didn't speak about that. The Dead Marshes is a big one. I get a lot of questions about this, especially recently. And this was something that was caused by the disease of war, and that it perpetuated itself, and that we have these like will-o'-the-wisps there, and that it grows, that the dead marshes get bigger over time, especially when the Wain Riders and Gondor and Sauron start basically feeding them bodies. Do you think that these swamp gases from the rotting corpses and the terrible things that happened there could have contributed to the plagues that Gondor went through in the Third Age?
I think it's very possible, and this is really to another point I wanted to bring up, both in Tolkien's work and in actual history. First of all, there's no question that there's some kind of magical disease, because the dead faces aren't rotted away; they're just horrified, lying there forever. So it's about the death of immortals from a poisoned hand. And if you read the literature of trench warfare in World War I, and remember that Tolkien was what we would call a survivor with PTSD, a survivor with shell shock that lasted the rest of his life. And if you want to know what that feels like, read his poem, Frodo's Dream or the Sea Bell. So he's describing Frodo in the same way. And just to have experienced that sheer overwhelm of horror. But there's also the fact, and this became really important to me a couple of years ago as I was doing historical research behind the COVID pandemic. World War I and the 1919 flu pandemic, the pandemic was well on the way at the end of the war and was spread by the returning soldiers coming home all over the world, and probably was spread outward from the U.S. as well. It's not really the Spanish flu at all. And it killed as many people as the entire war.
Yeah.
But it doesn't hold a place in our history books the way World War I does. And I think this is what Tolkien was getting at when he said, war tells a good story that people will read. If Tolkien had written an 800-page novel about rotting disease over a century, I don't think anybody would have read it. And
some people would. Not us, but some people would.
We obviously
hold on. I have something to add about that.
Well, let him finish.
If we had kept the lessons we learned from the 1919 pandemic, we could have stopped COVID in its tracks. So the difference to me between war and horrific disease is that we don't remember disease enough and don't learn our lesson. And that's why I brought this up tonight.
And I know you have something to say, Matt. I just wanted to add something to that real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you, Matt. Disease is really important. Like you mentioned that the so-called Spanish flu, there was nothing Spanish about it. It was spread mostly out of the southern United States. Killed as many people as the war did. most of the casualties in the Civil War were disease. And if we look at J.R.R. Tolkien as a person, what took him out of the war, the Great War? What put him in the hospital where he wrote Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin? It was trench fever. He wasn't wounded. There wasn't shrapnel. He was very, very sick. And trench fever is something that is usually pretty mild. It's almost never fatal. But he had a pretty serious case of it that put him in the hospital for weeks, which was a blessing because he got to be with his wife and he got to write these amazing stories. But it's still, he still had what they called at that point battle fatigue, PTSD. Matt, go ahead.
Well, a couple of points I wanted to dovetail on this. They're really, really, I think, important. First of all, you guys know that peat bogs preserve bodies, right?
Yes.
Not only the bodies,
yes.
but the biological toxins. I mean, they really preserve. So when you have a large war in World War I or a lot of the wars throughout history, where the bogs are covering a lot of bodies, or the battle happened close to a place where water and bogs become, bury these things. They become a very toxic place. The land doesn't do really well in short term. I mean, short term in the history of the world was what I mean.
And then you had mosquitoes and parasites and
And they can suck, and they're immune to that. So they go in there and they flies and bugs and beetles and things that bite human beings. They have a field day with all those dead bodies and they spread it everywhere. So that's one element of what he's talking about. But the main point here is that I don't disagree with you guys at all, but there's a different angle on this, and that is that Tolkien is talking about the wars related to the physical things that we struggle with in the physical world. But what the disease he's talking about is the disease of souls. He's actually talking about the long-term effect of the disease and the depravity of our souls, and the fight to keep them clean and pure from what Morgoth, which is the Satan figure, is doing to the world in every single way he can do it. And so there's a physical and non-physical thing here. Physical being the war, and non-physical being this disease of the soul, or the disease of the heart. And so he is talking about diseases, just in a different kind of way.
You brought in something beautiful into my mind that I want to pose to the both of you here about Morgoth specifically, and the disease, him being the source of it in Tolkien's Legendarium, that he made men afraid of death. And that's, of course, leads to conflict and struggles and wars. He made us afraid of the dark. He made us afraid. And I just think of the conversation between Morgoth and Hurin at Thangorodrim. Well, it started at Thangorodrim, and then he moved over to that great hill of dead bodies from the previous war, from the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, and he placed him on top of this mountain of bodies, and he spoke to him, and he basically said, I am God. I created the world. There is nothing beyond the circles of the world, and there is nothing beyond death. And Hurin, well, let me finish here. Hurin claps back at him, and he basically says, I've heard that before. It's a lie. And I get a lot of people who I think on a spiritual level misinterpret the point of the scene of the children of Hurin, because they talk about all the terrible things that befell afterwards because of Hurin back-talking the devil, But isn't that what Tolkien would have us all do? Like, if the devil was before you saying, I am in charge, I made the world, there is nothing else, there is only me. People say Hurin was foolish, that he was arrogant, and he called him Morgoth to his face. He called him a thrall of the Valar. Feanor did something similar. Feanor wasn't as good of a person, but he called him Jail Crow of Mandos. But isn't that what we're supposed to do as people, is to not only resist evil, but to openly rebuke it, to say, no, that's not true. That is wrong.
It is, and you two guys are so smart. I can't even believe it. No, I'm teasing, but no, it really is because he's Tolkien is talking about this scene in John where Satan tempts Jesus to renounce God and praise him instead, and if he does that, he'll give Jesus all this worldly power and blah blah blah. And he takes this passage with Morgoth and Hurin, and he turns it around a little bit, and makes this Hurin a man and not Jesus, obviously. But John, you are exactly right in the middle of the bullseye here, because he's actually saying that the only way you're going to have a redeemed situation for yourself in your own heart and a world is if you reject evil, if you reject sin, if you reject things that are going to corrupt you, and if you are wary about what those dangers are, then you have a much better chance at least not being aligned with evil. It would be a good start, And Hurin doesn't take the bait, and he's not afraid of death. And I think the reason he's not afraid of death is because he knows everyone, in one sense, is going home.
Yeah, we have to turn it over.
Here, and
we have to let Sid talk.
And we're going home, and so he's not concerned about what Morgoth says about everything.
And let's think about what going home means in terms of Frodo. I would say that Frodo did with his body what Hurin did with his speech. Frodo said, "Okay, you want the ring? I'm bringing it to your neighborhood. What do I have to do? Emyn Wheel, I keep going. Dead marshes, I fall flat-faced into your 1,000-year toxicity. Get up, covered in awful stinking mud, and keep going. Trapped by Shelob,
he also
keep going, and I become what? What is Gandalf's description and Tolkien's description? Frodo became someone so pure and transparent. Evil could be carrying him down and not stop him, and the light could shine through him like he was a clear lantern. Sadly, so clear, he could no longer dwell in the Shire or anywhere in Middle-earth.
And it's a process that began in Rivendell at the Fort of Bruinen, when he invoked one of the Valar against the Nazgul, and they recoiled with just the words Elbereth Githoniel. It was like The Exorcist, that when Max von Sydow, who I always thought in that film sounded like Gandalf, the power of Christ compels you. It's a rebuke of evil by invoking, specifically in his case, Varda, the mother of the stars, one of the purest beings in the earth. And I think Frodo and Hurin, that's a very interesting. I always thought of Frodo as being the end cap of more like Tur, who could not stay for certain reasons and had to go home.
And also,
Frodo also did one other thing. He also said, you, Sauron, are not going to destroy this world. You are not going to get a hold of this world and destroy the Shire. He was in really an active opposition.
I'm pointing the wrong way. I have something to say about that, but let's Sid finish his thought here.
There's clearly reference of Frodo the Nine-Fingered and Bear in one hand. Mm-hmm. And both Gandalf and Elrond talk about Frodo's destiny to do this and what the journey is doing, which is carrying all the evil of the world and being able to bear it. And this is why I want to talk tonight about these dark lands and dark forces that Tolkien and I would agree besiege, and Lewis too, besiege us inside and out. And perhaps what that does is turn us into people who will do unto others first as we would want to be done to in basic morality, and then have pity and mercy and understand what others deeply need and do for them what is most needful.
Yeah.
And let go of the self that can be poisoned by Morgoth. and become a lamp of a clear light.
And Frodo's a great example here because he's sort of the guy who, even in the end, approaching Mount Doom, when he has this despair because he doesn't think they're going home. He doesn't remember the Shire. He can't remember what food tasted like. He can barely move. Sam starts carrying him, but then Sam's back starts hurting, and he says, "I'll crawl." The idea of giving up never crosses his mind. He never tries to take the easy way out. The only time that he had tried to do that was with Galadriel. He offered her the ring, but not because he didn't want to bear it, but because he thought in this moment, and he was incorrect, and she told him that he was incorrect, that this is a being so beautiful and so good that she would be better at this job than he was, and she had to tell her, not only why that's a bad idea, but that he was chosen for a reason, and that she had come to realize that too, that he was chosen for a reason, and that he was the type of guy that, like, if he took on a job, he just did it no matter what it was, because he had seen evil come into his little land. He heard the Nazgul speaking with Sam's dad. He heard it from Farmer Cotton. Mordor is so far away from the Shire, but it had come to the Shire nonetheless. You're never safe.
I want to say that
I agree with all that. 4 minutes left in this. Hold on. 4 minutes left in this segment. Just letting you guys know.
Okay. I was going to say that the hobbits are really great examples of flirting with this edge between the golden rule and what you might call the platinum rule, which is, to treat each other the way you want to be treated. But the hobbits are very, very often, if not a majority of the time, treating each other the way they think that the other person wants to be treated. Because they're so devoid, or trying to be so devoid of self. Because even in the golden rule, there's a self involved. Because there's like, well, I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated. Well, if you remove I out of that, then all of a sudden you're left with, I'm going to treat you the way you want to be treated. But you can only do that if you engage in a full understanding of the other person. Even if you don't agree with them, if you really care about them, the idea is to get in sync with how they feel, how they process their perspectives, so that when you give them a gift or give them time or whatever it is, it's really felt the way they want it to be felt. And I think that Tolkien does a very, very good job at that cusp of this meaning.
I'm smiling here because I was just thinking about how Sid brought up this very dark and morose topic, and me and Matt turned it into this like positive thing.
That was my
goal. For each other.
We're like, oh, you want to talk about diseased lands, and then we start talking about overcoming it and everything. And I guess that was your goal, but it worked out beautifully there. With 2.5 minutes left, Sid, do you want to say any less? Wait, hold on.
Later on, I'm gonna.
Let's go in order. Sid, do you have anything left to say on this?
Yeah. One more thing, John. I agree that the moment that Frodo called on Elbereth at Weathertop, where he was then stabbed, and Gandalf says that it was more deadly than anything else could have been to the Lord of the Nazgul. But I believe that was the second time we saw Frodo do this.
He did it twice, yes.
And when he didn't do it, was with Old Man Willow. Old Man Willow is taking his friends, and Frodo totally freaks out.
He didn't know the name Elbereth at that point. That was Aragorn taught it to him.
He was literally just running down the road yelling for help, which, because Bombadil was running up the road, happened to be the perfect thing to do, but was totally unconscious. But after 3 days, in, I will say, Goldberry and Tom's house, the very next thing is he's trapped by an undead Barrow-wight. They all are. Mm-hmm. And he's the only one who awakens, the only one who strikes back. Something about Tom and Goldberry utterly transforms him into the hero who can make the quest. And that's often overlooked.
All right, with 1 minute left here, Matt, last words on this?
Well, I was just going to say, if later on I cover a topic that's really light, I'll let you two guys darken it up for me.
Okay. I'm going to stop the timer here because we're pretty much out of time anyway. I just wanted to know, Sid, you haven't seen the Amazon TV show, right?
Yep, and sorry guys, never will.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I did want to let you know that I have seen one of the episodes that Bombadil was in, and it's very interesting because he's so far removed from where he is in the books, but he's still near halflings. And there's this moment where you hear a female voice from the other room. It's following this one character whose name we don't know, but let's be real, it's Gandalf. And he's like taking a bath, and you hear Bombadil speaking to a woman, and you hear him say Goldberry. And I was wondering, are they going to show Goldberry? And then when the stranger walks in, there's nobody there but Bombadil. And he says, and it was like the perfect Bombadil reply. He says to him, "Is there somebody besides you here?" And Bombadil says, "You're here." And I thought, that's Bombadil for you. That's exactly what he would say.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. I guess.
Yeah, they got that.
That's for sure.
They haven't shown her yet, but the version of Bombadil we've gotten, I saw the pictures of him wearing his blue outfit with the yellow hat, but the episode I saw, he was not. So we're gonna see more of him, I guess. But he's close to where the Stewars are, and I always, you guys know that I always had the personal theory that he is extremely connected to the origins of the Hobbits, him and Goldberry both. And placing him in Rune, I thought, well, that's weird because, that's nowhere near where he would be. But then they had hobbits there, so I was like, okay, I understand that, why he might be there in the Second Age then. But anyway,
well,
we're not here to talk about that.
Well, I don't know if he could be there or should be there, but I'd have never subscribed to the belief that...
he can go where he wants, yeah.
Forest, and he can't get around where he wants.
Oh no, and you know that I'm 100% with you on that, Matt. People think he can't go outside the bounds of his lands. No, he just refuses to. At least in the Third Age, he refuses to go outside the bounds that he set for himself. He's not trapped there, but
at least that's what he tells people.
Well, it is the exact words he used. Tom will not pass this place. He won't. And Gandalf said it too. He made these bounds for himself a long time ago, and that's where he's going to stay, by choice. But anyway, we're going to get on to our second topic here, and it is my turn. So let me just reset the timer. We're going to put just 3 minutes on it, 2 minutes on it rather, so that I could introduce it. But I won't need the full 2 minutes. My topic here is, and I've been speaking with people a lot. And you guys know that we built ourselves a great group. It is not just the 3 of us. There is also the 9 of us. The 9 on Quora, the lore masters, as Matt likes to say. I don't want to rattle off everybody's names just right now, but there is a whole group of us that work together and write together and everything. And I have friendships with other people that I've met through Quora, through YouTube, or even right here on Twitch. And a lot of people hear the term Tolkien scholar, and they ask, well, what does that really mean? Like somebody asked me, like, do you have like a doctorate of Tolkien studies? Is that really a thing? And I said, no, that's not really a thing. That doesn't exist. But I did write a thesis, but that's not a thing. But I choose to use the word scholar because it means one who learns, not just necessarily teaches, although I do teach here, but people say, I want to do this. I want to be like that. I want to write about Tolkien. What advice do you have? So I wanted to bring this question to the Council of Tolkien. What advice do we have for people who are just starting out? Maybe they're not on the level of the 3 of us, or not on the level of the 9 of us. And when we were putting together the 9, me and Matt, Sid wasn't even in it at this point yet. He came into it a little bit after that. We had this whole discussion of who on Quora we're going to invite into this group, and we had like a lot of yays and nays and such. But for the people who are just starting out, for the people who want to dedicate their lives or large chunks of their lives to Tolkien, what is the advice? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set 30 minutes on the timer. And since it's my topic, I don't want to speak first. I'm going to have Matt speak first. So go. I'm sorry, Sid.
Okay.
I said it right before you put your hand up.
Want to go first?
Yeah, actually, I kind of do. It's just so very clearly in my mind. And what I'm recommending, there are two parts of what I'm going to recommend. One is for everybody, and the other is not for everybody. What's for everybody is find what you love, work on it from what you love, and go deep. So, for me, I love The Lord of the Rings, and it's the center of what I do. I love everything Tolkien, and because I'm also a fiction writer, I want to know how he did what he did. And so my deepest subject is actually the mind of Tolkien himself. The literary mind, the creative mind, the imaginative mind, the mind who could not know what was going to happen when Gandalf was standing in front of Moria and get writer's block for 2 years and then have the rest of the novel when he figured out that Gandalf had to pass away. The courage of that creative mind. And the other is to understand the thinking and the symbolism that matters to you. For me, although I was not born and raised Christian, the Christic symbology means a lot to me. And one Christian symbol is Jesus as having 3 lives: the suffering servant, the king, and the crucified and risen. And look, you've got Frodo carrying the evil of the world, suffering servant. You've got the unknown king who becomes king of the world, Aragorn. And you've got the one who dies to destroy evil and is reborn shortly later, Gandalf. So clearly, Tolkien is playing with these themes. He's also playing with themes from the Norse gods, as people know, many other sources. Get to know the story behind the story in the part of it that matters to you. And Matt loves the engineering, the technical, physical sizes and masses. Very different from me. Stuff I never really thought much about, but I'm so glad he does it because it's what made the Peter Jackson movies great. That couldn't be done with only my type of thinking. So do what you love, get to know it really deeply, know why you love it, and admire people who are totally different from you are, who are also Tolkien scholars. That's my quick version.
Don't be a generalist, right? Don't try to do everything.
In fact, these days, with all of the things coming out post-Tolkien, know what you will and won't deal with, and where I feel the profit motive is too much a part of the creator's elements, I just don't do it because it doesn't mean anything for me. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad. I'm just not interested.
You did say that there was a second part to that is not for everybody.
My focus on the religious is not for everybody. My focus on
you do you delve into the spiritual realm more than others.
Yeah, and I also delve into the journey of the soul towards purification, as we just talked about for half an hour. And that's not for everybody, but follow your heart would be the bottom line.
And I guarantee you that there are people who listen that when Sid is speaking about this sort of stuff are enraptured, and then when Matt talks about the engineering and the sizes, there's a completely different set of people that are completely enraptured. And then if I start talking about the languages and the meanings and the grammar and everything, then there's a third set of people that are enraptured. And there's a bit of a Venn diagram where everybody overlaps, which is when we talk about things that are very recognizable, like Frodo and Gandalf and Aragorn. Matt, I'm gonna pop it over to you now. Oh, I'm sorry, you're not done. Go ahead.
Yeah, one last comment on what you just said. 3 months ago, the three of us had a discussion before one of these things, and we said we all came to agree that we are a great group, not because we agree. We often do. We've got a good, 60, 70% overlap. but we are even greater because we don't agree or just
Yeah.
not interested. We admire each other. So admire others as you do this and learn from them.
Well, you know what? I'm going to let Matt go first, but you just made me think of what my advice is. But go ahead, Matt. Your advice for aspiring Tolkien scholars, in short.
Well, one of the things I first thought of when we formed our group, the nine, out of the best, I think among the best on Quora, was that exact thought, which was, which nine people on Quora really have like almost all the areas covered. I mean, the audience here gets to watch three of us, but if we had a show of all nine of us, we'd be at like 350 years of combined experience probably. And there's nothing you couldn't cover, and that's why we're formed ourselves into an LLC, and that's why we're a consultancy, and that's why we're writing a book. So it is really cool, but I wouldn't say for anybody to think that being a generalist or that you're going to achieve this really quick, because what you're listening to right now are people who just took the journey and are now, where we are right now. If I was to write a book about my journey in Tolkien, I would call it Tunnels Not Taken. I've always been really curious about the, yes, physical things, but the things that people don't often talk about, because there's just evidence, and I like to see how they connect and how we can figure things out. I've often written articles about this kind of topic, or thing I call literary forensics. How do you reconstruct the mind of Tolkien as though it's a crime scene? Obviously, his works are not a crime scene, but when you write as much as he does, and you lay stuff out here and there and everywhere, and they're related, and you know enough of the information like the three of us do, you can actually find a lot of information that just leads you down a tunnel that is basically a conclusion. There's no other way that it really can be, because Tolkien was so deep and so clear in so many ways, but you do have to find where they are to connect them. And so I like to put things together in my own way, as far as rebuilding those mysteries, reconstructing them as a forensics, like a literary crime scene. That's what's the most fun to me. Now, earlier you were talking about what schools offer this, and I have a list here. Signum University offers a concentration in Tolkien studies within its graduate program.
That's
University of Maryland.
Let me just, because you mentioned Signum University, that's Professor Corey Olson's program, who was my inspiration to get into this whole thing. Yeah. So, and sometimes he is streaming right here as well sometimes, and sometimes we even raid him and say hi to him and hang out in his streams, which you should follow on Twitch at Signum U. So if you're following me on Twitch, you should also follow him. I'm sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Signum University offers that, and for its graduate courses. University of Maryland offers courses on Tolkien in Oxford. The University of Washington, which is my alma mater, yay, offers courses called J.R. Tolkien, The Mythology for England. And the University of Chicago offers courses on Tolkien in medieval literature. There is another couple in Australia. University of Sydney offers courses on Tolkien's version of founding basically of fantasy literature. And in Canada, the University of Alberta offers courses on Tolkien and medieval studies. So they are out there. But if I was to then wrap up here before I give this to John, I would say find a place that's really that you're really interested in. Follow your heart. Follow the book that you really love. For somebody out there listening, it might be The Fall of Numenor, which I love. I love the Silmarillion and The Fall of Numenor so much. I can't even tell you. And but because of that love, I consider myself to be, probably in the top 10 people. Humbly, probably in the world, like a lot of you are, John and Sid, in your own areas, on just a couple of areas. So if you follow your passion and you do it for 40 or 50 years, I'm on year 47 now, you're going to lead yourself into other tunnels, as I say, other areas that are really important to you. Will lead into other things that are really interesting to you, and if you follow that, you're going to become quite.
A force.
You're going to understand how deep.
Yes.
Yeah, a force, but also you're going to understand how deep this really is. It's
Yes.
not like any other literature.
Just to cut in here, coming in from the chat there, Alice here points out that what you mentioned about reconstructing the mind of Tolkien in sort of a forensic study through the literature is actually similar to what is done in the James Joyce community as well. So it's not something that's entirely specific to Tolkien, but that is how literary scholarship works a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, well, I guess it's my turn then. Yeah, so because me and Matt have this sort of like friendly disagreement a lot about whether to call ourselves scholars or lore masters, and I know obviously he's lore master on. I'm pointing the wrong way. It's mirrored. He's lore master on Quora. He has the website loremaster.com and everything. And I always, and I even have like an alternate when I post on the spaces that we use, like the Nine and the Spire and whatnot. I do have an alternate credit on Quora that says second lore master of the Nine, although I usually use the main one that says Tolkien fan since the 80s, because I don't know, I'm concentrating more on just how long I've been doing it than how well I've been doing it, I guess. But my advice is, if you're just starting out, well, there's a bunch of it, but I don't want to just repeat what Matt and Sid said because it sounds disingenuous to do that, but they are correct in saying that you have to find the aspect of it that you love, and then, as Sid says, go deep with it. Go very deep with it. Do you want to learn the languages? Then learn the languages. Do you want to... I have these, like Matt sent me from a fellow that online goes by Will Whitfoot, all these stamps that are from Shire Post that are like real stamps that were made, and there's postal routes and everything. And I have a friend of a friend who was very interested to see all this, has no idea about anything about the Lord of the Rings or Tolkien, but is a real enthusiast for anything to do with post offices. And I took pictures of everything and sent them over, and they were completely geeking out. And that's really what it comes down to. Geek out. Find a group of friends and geek out over it. Let me finish it. I'll come over to you in a moment. But yes, do what they say. Find what you love, geek out over it, but more importantly, here's what to avoid. Do not think that you're going to do what we do by buying all the books, including, all 12 volumes of the history of Middle-earth and 2 volumes of the history of the Hobbit and the nature of Middle-earth, and read them, and then read the letters and memorize everything, and then have people ask you questions and just regurgitate the information that is already there, because you're just regurgitating. You're just taking in information on one end and spewing it out of the same end, really. What you have to do is be able to have what Tolkien referred to as strong surmise, that when there are questions that come in that there is no definitive answer to. What does this mean? Why did this happen? Not who, had the Silmaril on this date or whatever, but can we, and this is something I know Matt is going to love, with the information that is there, skeletal as it is may be, because the Legendarium is by large an unfinished work, can we reconstruct the rest of it in our minds the way that Tolkien would have? And can we answer those unanswerable questions using our own conjecture, the very, very definition of an educated guess, not presenting it necessarily as fact? But you don't want to be Daniel Day. You don't want to start making stuff up and publishing it and saying this is what happened. But like what we're doing is saying this is what probably happened, and here is a whole list of reasons why. And for people who are on a good level of familiarity with the work can look at it and say, these guys are right. I have more to say, but Sid had something to say, so I'm going to let you cut in here, Sid.
Good for me to cut in quickly because it picks up really on what you're saying. We've mentioned scholarship, we've mentioned unique areas of study, but we haven't mentioned one other major element. And
is it fellowship? Because that's what I was going to get into next.
No, it's different.
Okay.
It begins with Tolkien's word subcreation. A lot of people since the 90s have called it co-creation, but it means Tolkien was very clear, and I believe this is my literary view of everything ever written. The writer of a story or a novel or any other work does only half the work. The rest of the work is what the reader does, reading it, activating the imagination, and then living it out in good ways in his or her life. So how do we subcreate our own lives better, but also fan fiction? Tolkien would have no opposition to fan fiction. He wanted to see the stories extended in all the ways we're talking about: scholarship, scientific analysis, and fan fiction. And I'll give one example where it's okay to disagree with Tolkien. Tolkien was very pessimistic about the survival of the Entwives. He figured they had been destroyed when the Brownlands were created out of their land. And he really couldn't imagine.
His exact words were, "I fear that may have happened." He's leaving it open for you to say, well, maybe I disagree with the professor on this. Well, hold on one second. Sid, you were cutting out there. Could you just repeat what you said? No, your audio is... we can hear you, but you're distorted.
Speak very slowly and clearly.
Got it. You sound good. Yes.
Okay. Please go to Archive of Our Own, the best fan fiction site out there. Look up Sid Kemp and read The Return of the Entwives. Mm-hmm. And it shows how after many millennia, Treebeard and his beloved Timberthrill reunite. And it's an example of going a place Tolkien wouldn't go, but in a completely deeply studied, authentic stability of the creative mind.
Now, I have other things to say. I was going to get onto the fellowship idea, but I wanted to very quickly back Sid up on something he said, because I can see people with their phones tapping out the angry comments. Tolkien would never like fan fiction. The TolkienEstate.com website says so. He's dead. He doesn't run that website. I'm going to read you a paragraph from one of his letters that is exactly what Sid says. Before you leave those comments, before you attack Sid, I'm going to put my shield and my axe and my bow and all that stuff in front of him. This is the words of J.R.R. Tolkien. Do not laugh, but once upon a time my crest has long since fallen. I had a mind to make a body of more or less connected legend, ranging from the large and cosmogonic to the level of Normantic fairy story, the larger founded in the lesser in contact with the earth, the lesser drawing splendor from the vast backcloths, which I would dedicate simply to England, to my country. It should possess the tone and quality that I desired, somewhat cool and clear, to be redolent of our air, the clime and soil of the northwest, meaning Britain and the hither parts of Europe, not Italy or the Aegean, still less the east, and while possessing, if I could achieve it, the fair elusive beauty that some call Celtic, though it is rarely found in genuine ancient Celtic things. It should be high, purged of the gross, and fit for the more adult mind of a land long now steeped in poetry. I would draw some of the great tales in fullness, and leave many only placed in scheme and sketched. The cycles should be linked to a majestic whole, yet leave scope for other minds and hands, wielding paint and music and drama. Absurd. And the pessimism is there. Oh, that's absurd. That's never going to happen. And of course it has happened. And he would be delighted and horrified at the scope of it. He would be delighted that people are doing it. He would be horrified that millions of people are doing it. He would be he would I just cursed. He would poop himself. I'll have to bleep myself in the
I think his absurd was facetious. I think he's exclaiming absurdity to the whole notion of fiction, fan fiction, and what he just got done writing, but not in a bad way. In other words, that it's this act of creation, that it's this cathartic act of humanism that comes out in these stories, and it's just um, um, amazing that it will continue. And I think that he's kind of facetiously joking at the fact that he knows it's going to continue.
I I don't agree there. I think that he's a little morose in this letter because this was to his publisher, and this was in a reply to the rejection letter that they weren't going to publish the Silmarillion at the time, and he starts off with "My crest has fallen," and he ends with saying what his dreams were and how it's now absurd. And I think he's sort of crushed in this letter, and he's just sort of saying, "This was my dream, but oh well, whatever. You guys will have to finish it." So yeah, the third thing that I wanted to mention, since we have about 10 minutes left here, fellowship, big thing. I'm not doing this on my own. I have Matt and Sid with me. I consult them on things that I need consulting on. Matt, if he has a question about something, calls me up. Same thing with Sid, and I'm sure they call each other. And there's the rest of us, the 9. We write these articles and that are going to be in our book, and they don't just exist as a singular whole. Everybody reviews them. We have a whole peer review group. And we all give our thoughts and our advice and everything. And that's the whole thing. You have to be able to accept that other people might know better than you. You have to realize that, like, if somebody asks me, how long was Anne Callaghan's tale? I'm going to say, Matt, you're up.
You're going to say,
you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Matt, you're up. Because not only do I not know, I don't care. But Matt...
You don't want to know.
I don't want to know. I prefer to use my imagination. But Matt, I don't want to say he knows, but he'll come up with some mathematical equation that will figure it out. And then if somebody says, what are the Buddhist influences on the Lord of the Rings, I'm going to say... Sid, my man, this is all you, right? So, there's always going to be the people that that you're in fellowship with, that you're going to learn from and that are going to learn from you. You know how many people I have on Quora and YouTube that are like, translate my name into Elvish, and I'm like, you would think that I would get annoyed with it after like the 40th or 50th time. No, I absolutely love it, and that's why I offer to do it for people. That's why we have our names like that in Elvish, because it's just fun for me. If you're ever wondering why is that there, because it's fun for me. That's all it is, and it has to be fun. It can't just be work. Because do you think Tolkien did all this for work? No, he was a professor. He was a guy who taught Old English and Germanic studies. He taught Old Norse. He translated Beowulf and the Green Knight, and he taught these to his students, and he would come in and bellow words in Old English from Beowulf at his students, and they were expected to bellow and return the next line. That was his job. He wrote part of the dictionary, and he was a soldier, and he was a family man. The writing, that was to entertain himself, to entertain his kids. It was by happenstance that a lot of it got published, that his friends like C.S. Lewis were saying, this is wonderful, publish it, give us a story, as Sid says, give us a story. And Tolkien's like, but I want to write about Elvish crops and when they harvested their crops and what they wrote on their pottery, and C.S. Lewis is practically strangling, give us a story. And that's also understanding the world of Tolkien, is that the stories were for his amusement, for his children's amusement, and to a certain extent, with the Lord of the Rings, for the amusement of his fans who were demanding the Hobbit Part 2. He didn't want to write that. He wanted to write about the history of Middle-earth and Arda. He wanted to write about the creation myth and everything. And that got put off and was never finished, and we got an incomplete version published a few years after he died. So, that's my advice. We have 5 minutes left if you guys want to add anything to this.
I would just add one quick thing, and that is that what we're doing when we formed the Nine and everything we're doing is very freakish, actually. What people are seeing on this show right now are there isn't anything out there like it, and I'm not saying that we're special. I'm just saying that we are kind of special, but I'm just saying that when you start to research and try to be a Tolkien scholar or lore master. We use lore master because Tolkien used that term in the Silmarillion, a couple of places, so we use that by honor. Um, but this is a very unique situation for us, and so try to get yourself into a situation, play the long game. Eventually, you're going to find people who think and help you be better at a very difficult topic like this. And there's so much to learn, and just enjoy the journey, and it'll happen for you.
I'd like to pick up on that, but Shiv says, some of the people who are asking, how do I get into this, may have read they may have read the book a year ago. They might be 20-something or younger. And coming back to the very beginning, don't think, next week you'll be a Matt Richardson. This is a lifelong journey. And if you do what you love, you'll love what you do. And honestly, it took me over 40 years to find a cohort. And these guys are it. And I mean, I have a few writers who like what I write about Tolkien. That helps. But it's my solution to writer's block was to realize I am my own first audience. And I believe Tolkien, The Hobbit, his kids were the first audience, but for everything else, he was his own first audience. He wrote it because he needed to read it. So write, whether it's fiction or scholarship or physics, write what is true to you and succeed when you read it and are happy. And keep doing that no matter what anyone else does.
Yeah, Sid putting into words what I was struggling to earlier. Be your own biggest fan, in a sense that, what Tolkien did is that he was writing for his own amusement or for the amusement of his children. And that's what you've got to do. You can't just be I'm not going to throw out any names here because I don't put people on blast like this, but there are people on Quora who just think of themselves as sort of knowledge banks, and they will comment on a John Sierra post or on a Sid Kemp post or on a Matt Richardson post or Loremaster post and say, that's not what Tolkien said. And it's like, well, yeah, we know that. He didn't say that. But the question is not something that has an answer in what he did say. So you have to draw conclusions based on what he did say because he never finished his work. Coming in from the chat as well, Alice talks about a helpful technique called metacognition, which is thinking about how you think and how you process information, because everybody thinks differently and everybody processes information differently. Go ahead, Sid.
I want to support that comment completely. What you said, John, I would change this word. If it's for amusement, that's great. But if it's also for your own fulfillment in some deeper way, that's great too. And lastly, as you do this, you will come across critics. And I've had some things where I engaged an intelligent critic and we grew and learned. Mm-hmm. But these days I'm finding more and more people are saying really stupid things. And my decision today is when I see that, my analysis will be, would Grima Wormtongue have said that? Would Ted Sandyman have said that? And if so, there's this great thing called block. So feel free to just not waste time with people who are negative and attacking or utterly closed. And we will do that because I want to be open to everyone. But you can't take time to be open with closed people. And you just got to send them on and move on.
With 30 seconds left, I'm gonna say absolutely, and this goes into what I said earlier about Tolkien being both delighted and horrified. He would be delighted that people are trying to fill in the gaps and coming up with these great ideas, and with the paintbrush, with the pen, with the song, doing what he couldn't do, and essentially finishing his legendarium. But at the same time, he would be horrified by, well, just the internet as a whole, the sort of industrial complex of information that we've built for ourselves, our reliance on machines, our distance from nature. And he would definitely be horrified by people being able to mash out their thoughts and have them broadcast to the entire world in an instant without the time to be thoughtful and to think about what you're saying and the consequences of what you may say and how it will be perceived, or not even caring because you're under an assumed name, or you just don't care at all. And the anonymity of the internet, even for people like us who use our real names, the anonymity of it, the instant gratification of it, has changed scholarship as a whole. That we are trying to do it in a rather old-fashioned peer review style, but yeah, then there's type of people who would look at a 50-page article that like me or Matt or whoever has written, and just say, yeah, no, that's a bunch of bull, and just, didn't they think that's critique? And it's not. And you can't engage with that. You absolutely have to engage with intelligent, thoughtful criticism, but you cannot engage with people who just don't want to learn. And that brings us to you, Matt. You have a topic for us. I'm going to set up the timer here for 2 minutes so that you could explain it.
The topic I want to talk about today is something also that's not very well known or talked about, and that is the nature of Isildur's curse on the men of Dunharrow, otherwise known as the Dead Army, led by the Dead King, or the King of the Dead. And my little brief statement about the topic is there seems to be maybe a conundrum a little bit about whether or not Isildur as a man actually has what you might call enchanted or magical curse power, and whether or not it's more related to the fact that the men of Dunharrow promised, swore an oath to help Isildur against Sauron in the Battle of the Last Alliance, and they reneged and no-showed and actually brought the curse on themselves by Eru in the end, because because of the vow. They basically cursed themselves, and Isildur held them to it, and because he was the one who was promised, there is a question about how do they fulfill that promise finally, so that the suspension of their return back home to the halls of waiting can actually be done. So there's this little debate, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And the goal here isn't necessarily to agree necessarily, but sometimes with a group like us, we end up finding that agreement because I think there's a lot of harmony in what Tolkien is writing about. So we're going to let you hear us talk about finding that overlap in the Venn.
Okay. It's funny because in the 2-minute segments where we explain it, Sid went way over. I finished up really quickly, and then you used exactly 2 minutes. I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, Sid. I have to go first here, and I'll tell you why. Because this has been on my mind recently, as I mentioned to Matt earlier. I did write a whole thing about this very recently, and it will be included in one of the videos that is coming out. Isildur doesn't have curse powers. He's not a necromancer. He's a man. He's a great man, but a man nonetheless. And nobody on the planet, not even the Valar, could deny a mortal the gift of man, which is death. To go home, as we say, to be with the Creator. to go to heaven, if there is indeed a heaven in Tolkien's universe, and of course I think there is, nobody has that ability, certainly not Isildur. Some have the ability to temporarily anchor somebody to the world using necromancy. Sauron, Morgoth, the Barrow-wights, the Witch King, and such. But that's not Isildur. Isildur wasn't a black magic practitioner. He was one of the faithful. He was Elendil's son. He was not a student of Pharazôn. He wasn't one of the black Númenóreans who would do such a thing. It's only Iluvatar, only God, that can do that, and it is really just the saying of, you cannot take my name in vain. If you swear a oath, capital O, oath, to the One, he is going to make you do that, and we saw it with Feanor. Even if it's something bad, even if it's something that you shouldn't be doing, like retrieving the Silmarils at any and all cost, including murder of your kin. And when they swear that oath, it's not Isildur that curses them. It's not even Iluvatar that curses them. It's they have cursed themselves. They have put it upon themselves, and they cannot rest until then. Now, of course, we know that they did eventually ride with the king. It wasn't Isildur, it was Aragorn the second Elisar, and they scared off the corsairs, and they all jumped into the bay, and they freed the slaves, and then they passed from the world. They didn't go and fight in Pelennor Fields like in the movie, which was I think a mistake to do that. But it would have been cheaper to have the Dunedain there, less special effects. But I think, obviously it's sort of like when Maglor and Mathros looked up into the sky and they saw Earendil's star, and they said, surely there's a Silmaril in the sky. And they sort of looked at each other and said, it's out of our hands, but it's also out of Morgoth's hands, and for that Silmaril we should consider the oath fulfilled. And that's why their oath was able to be fulfilled by only retrieving 2 Silmarils, even though there were 3, because the third one, they had to realize that, okay, that's out of our hands, it's out of Morgoth's hands, it's gone, it's in the sky. And I think that's sort of like this moment where Isildur is long dead. He can't say, yeah, you did the thing. And Aragorn is not Isildur, obviously. He's of his line. But I think it's the wording of helping the king. Not in this specific instance, but just doing the thing that you were supposed to do, that you promised to do. That if you had not intended to do, you shouldn't have made a sacred oath on the stone of Elric, of all things, Go ahead, Sid.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. I agree with you 100% from a very different place, because this deeply troubled me 20 years ago. And I took about 2 years, obviously part-time, to sort through everything I could find. And of course, there's a lot less out there then than there is now. Might even be back in the 90s, I'm not sure. But when I did this work, I found two sources and a few concepts extremely relevant. The first is, if we look at the Oath of Feanor and what Mandos the Doomsayer said, most people read that and think that Mandos or maybe Manwë cursed Feanor. But you read it carefully and no. Mandos stands up there and say, hey, buddy, look at the crap you just did to yourself and all of your kin, Feanor.
This is what will happen, is what he's saying.
You sent yourself up Poop Creek. And I believe that Isildur created the situation in asking them to swear an oath on Feanor. And maybe Isildur made an error, because it's really stupid to ask people to swear by Eru, because this kind of crap might happen.
Yeah.
That's the worst of what Isildur. The people said, I promise I will do this. And as you said, an oath in God's name.
Capital O oath. Yeah.
will, in terms of divine justice, or what us Easterners would call karma, cannot be broken until the end of time. It either lasts till the end of time or is somehow fulfilled. And how is it fulfilled? And this is relevant to two more things you mentioned, John, both of which I agree with. First of all, the titles that Aragorn bears include heir of Elendil, which is what allows him to take the throne of both Gondor and Arnor, and heir of Isildur, which makes him the only person who can successfully lead a journey through the paths of dead without going insane, and the only person who can give the dead the opportunity to end their deathly curse in a now deathly land, getting back to my topic, by saying, now you can fulfill your oath. And what was their oath? They were hill people. They were of a class similar to the Dunlendings out west of Orthanc. They just lived where they wanted to live, and all they did is say, okay, yeah, you're right. You're growing an empire. Sauron's growing an empire. You'll leave us alone. If you win, we'll help out. That was their oath. They never promised to go to war, merely to fight on the side of the free peoples. So when Aragorn took them, and they ran with Aragorn to the edge of their own land, to the shore of the Anduin, to Umbar, which is what used to be their land. They got to the shore, poured out over into the boats in the harbor, and emptied those boats by the terror of their fear, and their job was done. And Aragorn rightly saw that. And if Aragorn had said, hey, I'm going to need help upriver, he would have betrayed his righteousness as a king. So the reason he didn't say, hey, I think I need help north of here in a few hours, he said, you are free, because they had done exactly what they had promised to do. And they had done it for the exact heir of Isildur.
I have to cut in there because he didn't say they are free. And this is something that I have to, that was the movie. I do have to say that this is something that people get. While Isildur does not have the ability to impose that curse, Aragorn does not have the ability to release them. Only Iluvatar can release them. And he turned to them and he saw them vanish. He didn't speak to them.
I thought in the original he said...
I could bring it up in case I'm wrong.
Please do.
I'm going to bring it up right now.
Let me just say what I remember. We'll see if I'm right. I hold your oath fulfilled. It wasn't a magical power, but it was, hey, Eru, you listening? I, Isildur's heir, hold your oath fulfilled. That's what I recall.
Can I provide some connectivity and harmony to what you're saying? Eru is the holder of this, what you might call this oath being held in suspension. The oath was made to him. He's the only one that can basically lift the suspension, only because the oath is honored. If the king, a parent, or the Aragorn, holds this over them and asks them to fulfill their oath, and utters the word, or utters the nod, or utters the whatever is required, that your oaths are fulfilled, it's not the curse being lifted because of Aragorn or because of Isildur. It's that it's being accepted as an oath that's finally been performed, and at that point, this oath in suspension is relieved by Eru.
I have the passage here, and it's sort of like in between what me and Sid were saying more than anything. What he actually said was, hear now the words of the heir of Isildur, your oath is fulfilled. Go back and trouble not the valleys ever again. Depart and be at rest. And thereupon the king of the dead stood out before the host, and broke his spear and cast it down. Then he bowed low and turned away, and swiftly the whole grey host drew off and vanished like a mist that is driven back by a sudden wind, and it seemed to me that I awoke from a dream. Very interesting wording here is that Aragorn tells them, go back. Almost as if he himself does not understand what are they going to? What are they going back to? He says, don't trouble the hills anymore. Does he understand what's happening to them in this instance?
I think he does in a general spiritual sense, that they're going back to a home where the dead spirits go. I don't think he has a necessarily a doctrine or a religious understanding of what Eru is exactly doing, but he understands enough to know that.
He may have been inspired by a sense of feeling something was completed and knew it was the oath. So he may be reporting his experience, but also if we look at this in Christian theological terms, and Matt, you may know this even better than I do, feel free to chime in. There is thousands of years long question called theodicy, the relationship between divine justice and divine mercy. In divine mercy, God wants us all forgiven and with him. But if we ain't misbehaving, that's not a problem. But if we are misbehaving, what is the resolution where justice is honored? And if we've failed to do right, as these guys did, what must we do? Is there a purgatory, as Tolkien described in Leaf by Niggle? Is there a time to complete the oath? And let's not forget the dead seafaring army of Ar-Pharazôn being trapped beneath the earth till the end of time. They had no way out until the end of time, but very similar. They left themselves undead. And so this is a case where what Aragorn did could be seen as a petitionary prayer from a righteous servant of Eru. He is Isildur's heir, he's Elendil's heir, he's the rightful king, and he's saying, from my perspective, your job is done.
Yeah.
And that message goes upstairs.
Yeah.
And then God does what God will do, which is, at last, says God, I can be merciful.
Yeah.
They've done something without that.
The concept of petitionary prayer is very astute here, I think, because it's used shortly after with Arwen saying that she's not going to sail to the west, and that she bids them to take Frodo in her stead. She doesn't have the authority to. There's no spots on the seats on Círdan's ship. You know what I mean? There's not like a limited amount of elves that go west. She doesn't have a ticket. It's non transferable. An elf can't say that a mortal can go in their stead. But I always saw that line as being similar, a petitionary prayer that Frodo may be allowed to sail to the west instead of Arwen. And of course the same grace was given to Bilbo and eventually to Sam and Gimli. But I think that we see this sort of thing in Tolkien's work a lot. We even see it with Elwing and Yarendil and with Amandil as well, all going to Manwë to petition him. Yavanna even did it.
In the case of Arwen and Frodo, there's actually a backstory. I don't remember if it's in the letters or where, but Tolkien specifically says that Gandalf could handle the communications. Remember,
yes.
He is a transmitter of dreams.
Yes. Loren means dreamer.
Yes. And once he was Gandalf the White, he was in communication with Manwë on an as-needed basis.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so when Arwen made that request, Gandalf was able to take it to Manwë and get permission. But note, there are two different levels here. Three even. There's permission by the elves to let a mortal come to Elvenhome. But that's on the continent of Aman, so you also need Manwë's permission to come to the Undying Lands. But Eru is not involved in those. If it's a matter of becoming immortal or remaining mortal or being released from a curse to fulfill your mortality through death and a return to the presence of Eru, at least we sure hope so, that has to be upgraded beyond Manwë.
Yeah.
And that happened to Gandalf the Grey. Early on, I thought, before the Silmarillion was out, I figured Manwë took care of it. But no, in the letters, Tolkien makes it utterly clear only Eru can resurrect.
Yeah. Gandalf, Tur, Luthien, those were all direct divine intervention from the highest order.
Yeah.
And so what I would just add. Oh, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sid.
The reason for that, it's a beautiful reason, is what Eru actually gave humanity and hobbits is the gift of mortality.
Mm-hmm.
Elves envy us because we have a way out.
Even the Valar will, after a time, envy the gift of man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we think it's a curse, but it's a gift, and therefore no one can take away a gift that God gives us.
I want to bring up one of Tolkien's lesser-known works, a poem by the name Firiel. Are you guys familiar with that one?
No.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. In Firiel, there's this beautiful mortal woman, and this is going into what you said here, Sid, that she was by the banks of the river, just sort of hanging out doing her thing, and a ship came by bearing elves on their way to the havens, to because she was at a river, obviously, on their way to the straight path to Valinor, and they were very taken by her, and they said, "Come with us." And she went to join them, and she found that she had just suddenly become stuck in the mud, and she said, "I cannot go with you, for it is not my place." And they left without her. And it's sort of interesting. The Valar decided that mortals should not come to the Undying Lands for a very silly reason. They don't want death in the Undying Lands. They don't understand death, really. They don't really get it. And after a while, as we talked about, they're going to wish they could die and that they wish they can depart. They don't like death. They made all of the plants, down to the last blade of grass, immortal. They made all of the animals immortal. They could not do that for people. They didn't have the authority to do that for people. Only God could do that. So they couldn't deal with that, because from their perspective, it would be like just people dying every day if mortals came there. And it really is just, they would make them sad, and they would miss their friends that would be there, from their perspective, for a really, really short amount of time. And it's all because of this. And here you see these elves are very taken by this woman, and they want to invite her to the Undying Lands. And something, whether it's the Valar or whether it's Iluvatar, I don't think Iluvatar cares if humans go to the Undying Lands. The only reason he cared about Farah's undoing it is because Manwë asked him to take care of it. Matt, we have to put it over to you here.
Well, all I would say is I'm sitting here thinking,
Okay.
In a really on a kind of a very relatively complicated topic, our audience just saw everybody come to basic alignment.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool about this group. I mean, you have all these years of reading it, and you come together, and you come down to. I mean, I'm Catholic, and you guys just hit it right on the head, and because this is what Tolkien is talking about. It's just really cool. I have really nothing to add other than that the celebration of that fact by itself. So
Yeah. Okay.
It's a really cool topic. It's really being held in the fabric of Arda, that this oath is being made and then has to be executed, and it's just it's cool.
With a little under 8 minutes left, then I want to add to the whole oath thought here, because we hear about the oaths gone awry very often. The oath of Feanor being just this absolutely terrible thing. The whole thing that they called Isildur's curse, because from their perspective that's what happened, but from our perspective, of course, that's not what happened. There is one other oath that comes up in Unfinished Tales, from the tale of Cirion and Eorl, the founding of Rohan. And this was an interesting one because it wasn't the Stone of Eric, it was Elendil's grave, this site that to Gondor was holy. We had these men from the north called the Eotheod. They were these Northmen that were indigenous to Middle-earth, not that different from the Dunlendings and such, more close to Beorn in terms of their cultural heritage and their DNA, so to speak. The men of Rovanion that were great allies of Gondor that came down to the south to fight on Gondor's behalf time and time again. And Cirion, who was the steward of Gondor at the time, was looking at Eorl the Young, who was the king of Rovanion, and said to him, you know what? I'm going to do something for you. Come with me. And he brings him to a place that nobody but the kings and the stewards have ever seen before. Elendil's grave, a place that nobody knew the location of. Everybody thought that Elendil had no grave. And he swore an oath, and he had the king swear an oath to him that he would cede a vast portion of the northern bit of Gondor, a place called Calanarthan, became their own land. He said, you will live here with us, and we will give you this land, and you could be the first king of this land, which he called Riddermark, which means horse land, really, and in Gondor's native Sindarin, they called it Rohan. But they swore an oath that their enemies would be the same, that they would always come to each other's aid. They were locked into an eternal alliance, that if one called, the other must come. And this is interesting because you never hear of it ever going badly. That even in the Lord of the Rings, when Theoden is just off of fighting Saruman's forces, he's old, he's tired, his men have been through, quite a lot. And when that red arrow comes, not only is it yes, but it's we were already going to. And this is one of the things that I chastised the films for, because the films made it seem like Theoden was sort of on the fence about it. You're like, where was Gondor? Well, you didn't ask them to help you. If you would have asked them, they would have helped you, or they would have been compelled to help you. If Denethor said no, he would have faced grave consequences, I think, because that oath was not just those two men in that instance, Cirion and Eorl. It was the stewards and the kings of Rohan. So there is an example of an oath being used that it doesn't go horribly wrong.
Well, the consequences are different.
Okay, one of you guys has got to. You're both talking at the same time, and I couldn't understand anything.
Well, I was just going to say the level of the oath is different.
Go ahead, Sid.
Go ahead, Sid.
I'll go last.
Well, I only have the one interjection that the nature of the oath and the weight of it were just different between the two. But John's right. But that's all I have. Go ahead, Sid.
Yes, and it's an uplifting oath for generations, not only of the kings and stewards, but of both nations. It's a bond of brotherhood. In Christian terms, it would be called philos, spiritual brotherly love, to uphold and uplift each other. Yet it also has some unfortunate side effects. By giving the land that became Rohan to this group, the people already dwelling there were forced west.
Yeah,
they crossed
the Dunlendings,
Isen, became the Dunlendings, with endless resentment that their lands were taken, which Saruman then capitalized on through his voice and deceit. So even the good oath that did many, many good things did have a troubling consequence. We just lost video.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Give me a second.
No problem.
There you go. Okay.
I
was trying to put something up on the screen and it didn't quite work the way I wanted it to.
I want to
move into the whole real quick.
Yeah.
I want to make Frodo failed in his oath, but if you read it carefully, his oath there's the factual point that he went until his mind was broken. The oath was never broken; he was broken. But also, if you go back and read the Council of Elrond, it said over and over, "Your oath is to take the ring to Mount Doom."
Yes.
He never asked to throw it in.
He didn't swear to the one either. And I want to just say that to rebut what Matt said, it wasn't a different level of oath. Because I have the story up in front of me. I was trying to put it up on the screen. It didn't work the way I wanted it to. Eorl then stood forth, and taking his spear from his esquire, he set it upon the ground. Then he drew his sword and cast it up shining in the sun, and catching it again, he stepped toward and laid the blade upon the mound, with his hands still about the hilts. He spoke then in a great voice, the oath of Eorl, oath with a capital O. And he speaks it in both languages, and here's the actual text of the oath. Hear now, all peoples who bow not to the shadow in the east. By the gift of the Lord of Munburg, we will come to dwell in the land that he names Calanarthon. And therefore I vow in my own name and on behalf of the Othead of the north, that between us and the great people of the west there shall be friendship forever. Their enemies shall be our enemies, their need shall be our need, and whatsoever evil or threat or assault may come upon them, we will aid them to the utmost end of our strength. This vow shall descend to my heirs, as all as may come after me in our new land, and let them keep it in faith unbroken, lest the shadow fall upon them, and they become accursed. So he's even saying, yeah, curse us if we don't do it. Oath with a capital O. I would have to say that is the highest level of oath possible.
Well, my distinction isn't necessarily with your interpretation of oaths, capital O. What I'm saying is that, from my perspective anyway, my position on the difference is that when you swear an oath on Eru that you're going to fight Morgoth or Sauron in a battle in direct confrontation to evil, it's a different kind of connotation in Tolkien's.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you're. I'm not saying you're wrong at all. I'm just saying that I think that in this particular kind of situation, an oath between friends, it's carrying down capital O. I totally agree. Yeah. But what was at stake for Isildur and having them be betrayed like Ulfath did to the Union of Maedhros when they were fighting Morgoth is something that the Eru and Mandos are not going to suffer. Okay. You're not going to suffer that break of that kind of.
Well, I'm going to return to that in a second. I just want to. I can't be the linguistics guy without mentioning this. I put up with a lot of Sauron, and that kind of thing, but it's Mathros. Mathros.
Oh, you mean like Matthew, kind of?
Yes. But with the soft th, like the th in father, Mathros.
I got
okay,
you.
Okay.
Anyway, that was the distinction I was making.
I understanding what you're saying, I agree that it's a different level of oath, and I would actually say that it's a higher level of oath using that logic, because it's not promising to do one thing one time. It's promising to come to your aid forevermore, and visiting it upon people who don't exist yet. That they're saying that Theoden is held to this oath, Denethor is held to this oath, Aragorn is held to this oath, Éomer is held to this oath. People that don't exist yet are held to this oath, and it goes on forever. I would have to say that's a great deal more hefty than we will ride out with the king and assist him against evil once.
But it also
frees. Well, there's one difference.
Yeah, that's a big difference, right?
It's an alignment, saying, I know I'm mortal. I'm not going to make an oath that would leave me unable to fulfill my own mortal destiny.
And I would love... Oh, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
Well, just that alignment is part of what makes it a blessed oath.
Yeah. And we are out of time. I would love to sit here and talk about the morality of visiting an oath on your heirs and everything. Maybe one day we'll have to discuss that sort of thing, because being born into an oath that you had no part in the making of seems kind of a little suspicious to me. And
well,
that's a discussion, yeah.
Eru, well, no, just real quick. That's kind of my point. Eru doesn't like those kind of things because that's what Feanor did to his progeny.
But they were there. They were there. They made the oath, and they even reiterated it upon his death.
But it carried out to so many other people that were their kids and their kids and their kids. All I'm saying from my perspective, just my perspective, is that kind of oath isn't something that Eru was ever really hot about. But when you say you're going to fight Sauron or Morgoth as an army, when it really counts, when the balance of power and good and evil is at stake, and you renege and don't show up, that's the kind of thing that gets Mandos up in the middle of the night. That's all I'm saying. That's my only opinion.
Last word, Sid. Go ahead.
This is very practical and relevant. What does all this say about taking an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States?
Yeah.
Let's think about that for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, let's think about that. Okay, but we are done for the day. Do you guys? Let's see. Let's go with plugs. Matt, go ahead. Plug away.
The 9 is going to be entered into an LLC on Monday. We're going to be at a consultancy group and writers consortium officially, and we're going to be able to take questions and contract offers and enter into contracts for our book that we're writing and all the legal stuff that we've been talking and planning for a long time now. And so that's one real quick announcement. Again, my name is Matt Richardson. I go by Lore Master. We are all Lore Masters of the 9, but I go by Lore Master on Quora. And if you want to check out my articles or John's or Sid's, that's a great place to look at the best writing and even vetted and peer-reviewed writing that you can get anywhere online. And thanks for joining us tonight.
And loremaster.com, right?
Yeah, and our website, our team's website is loremaster.com, and that's going to be basically what you might call our storefront or our introduction to who we are online self there. So, yeah, thanks, John.
And Sid cheated. He already plugged. No, thank you. Sid cheated. He already plugged his archive of our own, but go ahead and do any and all plugs you want to do again, Sid.
First of all, I'm Sid Kemp. I'm known as Sid Kemp. To answer a question John asked earlier, and I mean this with a very deep study, that Tolkien never touched Buddhism in any way that I can find. Not that there aren't some harmonies there.
I was just saying, if that question came up, I would kick it your way.
Yeah, there it is. It's already answered. Most of my writing is on Quora. The published writing is on Quora, and we're talking over 10,000 answers, half of them about Tolkien. But there's also about a dozen stories on Archive of Our Own, and I want to be clear. The reason I've studied how did Tolkien write is to improve myself as a writer for 40 years before I published Tolkien fanfic. I don't want to blow my own horn, but I deeply ask you to give yourself the gift of taking a look. And most of the stories can be read in under 10 minutes. Please take a look at these tiny little gems I offer. Archive of Our Own, also known as AO3, the premier fan fiction site, especially for Tolkien. And there I am, Sid Kemp, and I hope to see you there, and thank you.
And of course, you guys know me. I'm John Sierra, NicroVMX on Twitch and YouTube as well. And of course, you guys know me on YouTube as John Sierra. Links in the description of the YouTube video version of this to everything involved. And of course, as you guys know, I'm very, very active on Quora. I have over 6,000 answers, all of them about Tolkien. Well, I think 2 of them were about me, but most of the 6,000 are about. I occasionally get questions about me, and I'm like, sure, I'll answer it. I always feel like Tolkien in that one letter to Peter Hastings, where he didn't actually send it. He wrote it, but he didn't send it because he says it's too self-important, But we will see you guys in not too long. because we're doing this late. We will be meeting again in 2 weeks on the 3rd of October. October 3rd will be the next Council of Tolkien, and we'll have a different background. We were in Lothlorien today. I think the next step of our journey will be Amon Sul, so that should be pretty cool. And yeah, so
it's an Amon Sul.
Amon Sul, yep. So we're gonna go ahead and end the stream with a raid, as I do every day. I do stream every day if you're interested in gaming and stuff like that. Let's see, who are you going to raid? I was hoping we would see Professor Corey Olsen on so that we could raid another a Tolkien streamer, but unfortunately not. I think we'll just go ahead and let's see. There's a lot of people on right now. We're going to raid my friend Amethyst Corn. She's a lovely person who is out in the West Coast streaming a game called Life is Strange 2. She'll be tickled that we'll come over with some sort of a movie quote here. So let's head over. I'm on the wrong screen here. We should be over here. Oh, I don't have you two on this screen. We got to fix that at some point. That's okay. All right, let's raid Amethyst Corn. And just to quickly go over the schedule, just for the next few days, I'm not going to go through the whole week thing. I will be live tomorrow afternoon with Super Mario RPG, Saturday and Sunday nights. Saturday night, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Sunday night, Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, and then from then on, following the regular schedule. Let's see. Let's put... You know what I'm going to put in there? I'm going to put a bit of Bilbo Baggins in there is what I'm going to put. I don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you as well as you deserve. That is going to be the quote that we're going to put in there.
I want that for a bumper sticker.
That would be a fantastic bumper sticker. Okay, so for everybody in the chat room portion, copy that, paste it as you head into Amethyst Corn stream. We're going to be automatically shunted over there. I will see you guys tomorrow. I will see you guys in 2 weeks for more Council of Tolkien. And me and Matt and Sid are probably going to chat for a few minutes before we hop off of here. Here we go.